So what does it mean to be metabolically inflexible? We're going to talk today about metabolic flexibility, how important that is, and how you can recognize if you're metabolically flexible or inflexible. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you like the content here. I'm Dr. Shelley Meyer. This is my channel. Hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video I try to get them out every Friday. And I have lots of videos here about metabolic health, gut health, hormone health, functional medicine, all of the above. So if you like, subscribe, share, that helps the channel grow and helps me to make new content that I can put out there to hopefully help you. So again, I'm Dr. Shelley Meyer. I'm a functional medicine doctor, family doctor, and a registered dietitian and nutritionist. And as I was saying, I specialize in gut health, hormone health, and metabolic health. And I'm here to bring you my expertise on those subjects, to share with you, to not be your doctor, but to hopefully supplement what you're doing with your healthcare provider and help you in your healing process. So let's talk a little bit today about what is metabolic flexibility and what is metabolic inflexibility. So metabolic flexibility refers to how you use your fuel. Are you using your carbs as your main fuel source or your fat as your main source? And to be flexible between using different fuel sources is to be able to switch between the different fuel sources. Based on how we eat, we can get stuck in certain patterns and not be able to switch between the two. So when you're metabolically flexible, you can eat your carbs for dinner, you can burn the carbs shortly after, you can then have some extra glucose, which is the breakdown of carbs, and store it as glycogen in the muscle, but then you can also return to burning fat after eating carbs for dinner. When you're metabolically inflexible, you can't do that, and you're usually burning through your carbs and not getting into that fat burning stage, and then you're storing fat. So you really want to be metabolically flexible, where you can switch between the carbs when you've just consumed them, and then the fat as, burning your storage fat when not having just consumed carbs. So this all relates to insulin resistance also. So when you're insulin sensitive, you're more in the flexible fat burning stage. When you're insulin resistant, you're not in the flexible fat burning stage, and then you're in the carb utilizing, insulin producing stage, and more fat storing stage. So some people can eat the same food as the other person that I just put in that example and not get into that fat burning stage. And those are the people that are metabolically inflexible. They can't use that stored fat, and they tend to keep their stored fat and be overweight, obese, or even have, even be in a normal weight, but have fat stored around their organs, which is dangerous for heart disease or diabetes or anything like that. So you can be a skinny fat, like we've probably talked about here before. So why are most people around us, and in our society, especially in the US, metabolically inflexible? Well, number one, we live in a high carb world. So we live in a world that has fast food, in a world that has large pasta portions that are huge, donuts for breakfast, pastries for breakfast, high carb cereals for breakfast, always having your meat and potatoes, or always having your rice or pasta or bread or dessert with your dinner. So we live in a very high carb world. Therefore, we can be more insulin resistant. We could store our fat. We're not going through it, and we're not flexible. We can't switch between fat burning and carb burning. So meal frequency is number two. So we also tend to, especially in the US, live in a world where we snack quite a bit. We don't really space out our meals. And of course, there's exceptions to this rule, and hopefully you're not doing these things that I'm saying. But if you are, that could be why you're metabolically inflexible. So our meal spacing, our meal frequency, as I talked about in my other insulin resistant video, which I will mention here, or post here, when we are not spacing our meals out appropriately, we don't give our body time to process that meal, and then we're constantly producing insulin, and then our bodies get immune to it and become, not immune to it, but they get resistant to it and become insulin resistant, where our cells will not let in the insulin with the sugar out of our blood And then we have that building up, and then our cells just become like, well, you're always here, insulin. We're not going to let you in. Just that annoying neighbor that you don't want to let in. So also our meal composition, if we have a traditional way of eating, like we eat our largest meal at night, that can lead to insulin resistance and lead to metabolic inflexibility. If we eat a lot of carbs, in the example I was mentioning before, we can be metabolically inflexible, particularly if we eat a lot of carbs at night. If we are even sometimes fasting for too long. I know everybody that likes their fasting, don't get mad at me. I do promote fasting, but I like to have people eat their largest meal in the morning and then kind of taper off throughout the day. So some people are going quite a long ways without eating, and they can then put themselves into more of a stressful state. So speaking of that, number 4 is stress. So stress can lead to inflammation, high cortisol, lack of sleep, and other chronic disease. And then that can trigger us being metabolically inflexible because our body feels like it's in a state of emergency. And then it's going to use our quickest food source, right, as its energy. It's not going to switch to our stored fat, because why do that when you're in an emergency state? You need quick energy. So if our body senses it's in stress, it's not going to be able to get into metabolic flexibility. Before we go on to the other states, let me know in the comments if you feel like any of these are ringing true with you, if you're metabolically inflexible, if you've been told you're metabolically inflexible, or if you're currently working on metabolic flexibility. I love when people comment and we all learn from each other and we can start a conversation. So other factors, surprisingly, number 5 can be pregnancy. So that obviously only applies to women, but it's a surprising factor in metabolic inflexibility. The pregnancy state and the postpartum state can then put you into metabolic inflexibility. How long that lasts depends on where you started. It depends on if you started overweight before pregnancy or if you gained a bunch of weight during pregnancy. That inflammation from the extra weight can then keep you in, metabolic inflexibility and promote more of that. So number 6 would be lack of sleep. So lack of sleep is just kind of like stress. You're in that inflammatory state. You don't have that restful sleep. Your hormones are imbalanced, and you can therefore want that quick fuel source. Another example is, when you have lack of sleep, you do crave those quick fuel sources. So your body's going to want to go to those also. Number 7 would be inflammation. Again, kind of a repeat, but it's important to keep it as a separate point because inflammation can come from stress. It can come from overeating carbs. It can come from lack of sleep. It can also come from high blood sugar, high cholesterol, or, those things can contribute to inflammation too. From injury, from overtraining. So number 8 is overtraining. So we may think, oh great, we're exercising, or oh great, we're a competitive athlete, we're not going to be in metabolic inflexibility. But when someone is overtraining, over-exercising, and not supporting their nutrition appropriately, they can be in a stressed state, an inflamed state, and they can be metabolically inflexible. And then another example would be number 9, which would be starvation. So not necessarily true malnutrition starvation. That doesn't happen a lot, probably in people that are watching videos on YouTube. Could, but this would be intentional starvation. So low calorie eating, so low calorie eating, low calorie, high carb eating, yo-yo dieting, insufficient calories to fuel your workouts, that kind of thing puts you into a stress state and can lead to metabolic inflexibility. So do any of these sound like something you might be doing? If so, let's dive deeper. I'm going to have a whole series on metabolic inflexibility and metabolic reset and metabolic flexibility diet. So the next video I'm going to have, stay tuned though, but for this video is not over, but the next video I'm going to have will be on the metabolic flexibility diet. But one thing I wanted to say is I do have an insulin resistant cheat sheet, and insulin resistant, like I said, resistance is tied to metabolic inflexibility. It can be the cause, very tied in. It's not necessarily the only thing that would contribute to metabolic inflexibility, but it's usually you're in that state if you're metabolically inflexible, or it's one of the main causes of metabolic inflexibility. So check out my insulin resistant free PDF cheat sheet. I will have a link in that of that in the description. It gives you what you can go to your doctor with to test, like what you can ask for if you want to test for insulin resistance, what the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance are, and some ideas for structuring your meals, all the things I talked about here and all the things I'm going to talk about in my future video on metabolic flexibility and the diet are on this cheat sheet. So I recommend you checking that out. You just have to sign up for my email list. I don't spam you. I send out helpful information. I send out information about the upcoming video and links that might be interesting, but I don't spam you. So please like and subscribe and check out my other related functional medicine, gut health, hormone health, metabolic health videos on this channel. That helps to grow the channel. Also, if you want to help grow the channel and get a discount on supportive doctor recommended supplements, check out my full script dispensary, which is in the description. I'll have recommendations that relate to metabolic flexibility in there, and that would really help support the channel. Also, liking, subscribing, and sharing. And until next time, please be good to yourself and be good to the world around you, and I'll see you soon.